Welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Mortensen and I am the Outreach Director with the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. Welcome to Rooted in History, African American Heritage Sites in King County, a panel webinar of the folks who have helped us add some Black heritage sites to the Revisiting Washington website. So today we're going to be doing a bit of an overview of the project, and then the bulk of the event will be sort of a roundtable panel discussion with our panelists here who we're so thankful have joined us, not just today, but have been working with us for many, many months on this project, which we're so excited about. So I want to begin by, thanking our sponsors and funders. The project was funded by For Culture and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the specific project to do this research and get it on the Revisiting Washington website. But then we also want to thank our education sponsors who sponsored the work of the Washington Trust statewide. And this is kind of one of our education events that those sponsors are supporting. So I want to thank Bassetti Architects, Daniels Real Estate, Pioneer Masonry Restoration, Swenson Safe or SSF Engineers, McDonald Miller, Marvin Anderson Architects, Nelson Electric, and SWCA. So thank you to all of our sponsors, and of course, especially to For Culture and the National Trust for helping make this project happen. So we're going to, I want to first introduce our panelists briefly, and then I will go ahead and give an overview of the project itself, and then we'll come back to the panelists and then have that roundtable question discussion. So remember, if questions come up throughout the event, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, but if you want to just introduce yourself or contribute to a general conversation, the chat box is open for that. So first, as I said, I'm Jennifer Mortensen with Washington Trust, but we're also have the pleasure of being joined by Stephanie Johnson-Toliver. So I'll go ahead and give Stephanie a moment to introduce herself.
Oh, hi, everyone. I hope that you can hear me okay. I'm coming in and Zooming from my phone at home. I am the president at the Black Heritage Society of Washington State. I've been active in the society for a number of years and president for the last, just about 4 years now. So this project is really exciting. We'll tell you lots more about it, but I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Stephanie. And next I'll go to Jackie Peterson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Peterson. My pronouns are she, her. I am an independent consultant I do research. I work with museums to develop exhibitions, and I do exhibit writing, historical research, mostly in the history and heritage fields. And it was a very true honor to work on this project with BHS. I appreciate Stephanie so much for bringing me on board, and excited to be here for this conversation today.
Great, thank you. And Omari.
My name is Omari Salisbury with Converge Media. Man, I consider it a real honor to be able to work with the Black Heritage Society of Washington State and Stephanie Johnson-Toliver, who reached out to us. It's a big deal to me. I'm a history buff. So this is a real big deal to be included in this project, and just really happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, it's a big deal to have you involved because we have some great audio and video and photos for this project that are really exciting. So speaking of that, I'm going to switch over to screen share to give the audience a brief overview of where the project is situated and what the Revisiting Washington website is. So it'll just be a brief overview before we dive into questions for the panelists. So the Black Heritage Society content is housed in the Revisiting Washington website, which was a project developed by the Washington Trust a few years back. It was based originally on content from Revisiting Washington, a Guide to the Evergreen State, which was a book published by the Works Progress Administration back in, I believe, 1941. So we got a couple of grants to basically transfer all that sort of dense information in that book to an interactive website that had mapping capacity and could help people kind of follow along on highways and see historical information about the places that they were driving. So the book was written before the interstate system was built. And so it really maps all those small highways that connect the sort of Main Street type towns in our state. And a lot of those highways are still there and still really wonderful areas to drive through. So I'll give a brief intro to the overall website. So the website is split up into different tour routes. So the map here is loading. So you can see the tours crisscross all across the state. And as you click one, you can see kind of the direction that it takes. And here's one of the long ones all the way across the state, Idaho line, all the way over to Seattle. And then you've got a little bit of information about what's in the tour. And then the tour is actually broken up into a couple of different segments. And you can jump on one of those segments, which we call legs. And then it actually follows you if you allow it to show your location. It'll have your little blue dot floating along the line as you travel. And then you can kind of continue on through each spot, reading a little bit about each site. You can click in to see a little bit more about each site. So it's really designed to be little snippets of historical information along these traditional highway routes. So one of the things that we certainly realized as we were transferring this information to the website and is very obvious is the book really captured a certain type of history and a very narrow slice of Washington's history. And so one of the things that the Washington Trust has been doing over the last few years is working with different groups to broaden that history and include more stories. And so the Black Heritage Society is one of the groups that we've worked with, and we've added sites. We've called them kind of themed tours. So they're not really along a route, they're more a group of sites in a geographical area. So we partnered with them to identify those sites. They did all the heavy lifting of the research and providing all the materials, and then we brought that information onto the website platform. So actually I'll narrate what I was saying. So we've got the feature slide here on the home page, and you start by clicking on to this statewide context page. So we also asked them to provide kind of a general overview of Black heritage in Washington state, just to kind of set the stage. So this page has that narrative. And it also has a map, which you'll see that there's one location on the map, which we would love to turn into multiple locations across the state to add to the history of Black heritage in Washington. So we have some sites about Japanese heritage and Latino heritage, which all have statewide pages that hopefully, as we continue to work with our partners, that we can add more sites of interest to the statewide story. This also has a couple of teaser images here of some of the sites. And then it actually also has an option to link out to the original tours that have this location in them, for instance, the Seattle ones, because our sites are in Seattle. So if we click into the King County page, you'll see that all of our sites here are in this interactive map space. And we also have a little bit more context. First it was statewide, and now we're getting into more of the local information in King County and Seattle. So that's this text here. And BHS decided to organize it into themes, which was a little bit new for this website. So you'll see these themes reflected on multiple pages. So the themes are legacy, arts and culture, call to action, and spirituality and community. So each of the 15 sites relate to one of those themes, and so that's a really interesting way to organize some of the information, which we'd not done before. So really appreciate that. So on the map, you can click on a site and actually go straight to that site page. And as I mentioned before, if you're on your phone and you allow it to receive your location information, if you're in the Central District, you could actually see your little blue dot on this map here on this page. And so in this particular instance, the sites are a little spread apart. It would be a pretty long walking tour if you wanted to try to hit all of them, but you could interact also kind of in real time on your phone as you walk around, click on the sites, learn a little bit more. And then here's another set of teaser images, some video. And then here at the bottom of the page, we do list all the sites out with basically the theme they're related to, and then a little bit of information about each one. And I want to click into a couple. I don't want to take up too much more time, but they're something like the Northwest African American Museum, and it shows its location on the map, has information about the site, some images specific to that site. And then we're really pleased, this is a pretty new feature for us, is to have these oral histories represented on the site. So it's got a little bit of a summary, and then you just hit the play button and you can hear some oral history. And every site, I think, has an oral history related to it. So that's very exciting. And then another interesting one is, let's see. Yesler Terrace is another great one. This is an interesting one because it's changed a lot over the years, and a lot of the historic buildings that are there are no longer, so it's been redeveloped. And so there's some great stories of the former Yesler Terrace here. And then the last one I wanted to show was Mount Zion. Let's go back to here. There it is. And this one, again, you can see it's got the specific location on the map. And this one has a couple of extra points of interest, which are, most of the sites are just one site, but this one had a few extra little cultural features that we called out in this section here. So lots of great things to explore. I'll have, Christy can throw the link directly into the chat, but obviously you can take a minute to poke around after the event, and hopefully that gave people a pretty good overview of what the content, how the content is organized, and how they can explore it in the map. So again, if you had any questions about that, we'll address those at the end of the event. So go ahead and throw those into the question and answer box. But we'll start with some discussion questions that we've got for the panelists about this project. So Stephanie, I'll throw this one to you first, but of course, any of the panelists are welcome to jump in, but tell us about the types of projects that BHS is working on, and how did you, or works on generally, and how did you come to be involved with Revisiting Washington and Jackie and Converge Media for this project?
Okay, I'm really happy to talk about my partners, especially, but I should say at BHS, we have been around since 1972, and we've been amassing this wonderful public collection that is the largest public collection of African-American memorabilia, photographs, and documents as a public asset since '72. And our partners, I was going to say partners in crime, but there's no crime, Bohai, is where our resource and our assets are held, and we manage them out of the Resource Center in Georgetown. So we work on specifically that workhorse, which is our collections, but also education and historic preservation over these last few years have become very important to us, and are some of what we plan to move forward, particularly with historic preservation in the county, but also statewide. So with the Washington Trust, who's always been an advocate for projects and programs that reflect the history, across the state, and we joined the National Trust as well to, bring forward and lift the underrepresented communities, the legacies, and the heritage. And I think it's been at least more than a year, just over a year, when we first started talking with you at the Washington Trust about this tour. And right away, I knew that it had to be something that was a team effort. And who better for me to call on than not only the people that do this type of heavy lifting, this work, and friends also in the community with me, are Jackie Peterson, who introduced herself earlier, Omari Salisbury at Converge Media, very powerful media in our community, who brought Carlos Amani on as a photographer, and some of the video work from Elite Collective. I don't know if Omari, if Carlos is on the call today or in the meeting, but I hope he is. And Joe Friedberg. I mean, what can I say? Joe Friedberg came on from Shelf Life Community Stories project as she's the co-founder at Wanawari in Seattle Central District, but is also a documentary filmmaker and archivist. So she lent the excerpts for the tour from the Shelf Life collection. So yeah, this really fabulous team came together to make this experience happen.
And it's been an honor for the Washington Trust to be able to work on this and add this content to our website. So we're really, really happy about that. The next question I have is why, as we were sort of initiating the project, can you tell us, and this could be Stephanie or Jackie, why did you decide to focus in on the Central District, and kind of how do you feel that it is a critical area for understanding Black history in Seattle, King County, and broadly for the state as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say a few words, but I know that Jackie and both Omari have opinions, on this. And the Central District, being one of the oldest and historic neighborhoods in Seattle, just was really clear for me in the beginning, is that when we started talking about Black people and African American heritage and stories in King County, it was so broad because there are so many wonderful opportunities and locations for us to go to. So we had to kind of bring it in and focus. And that focus for me was the Central District, because that is actually where Black residents began to gather and build their homes. Here in the Central District in the late 1800s with William Gross and the history of William Gross and the property off of East Madison Street, which grew into the Central District. But we've had, Black people have had a pretty large presence in Seattle, along the waterfront through the Jackson Street corridor, the International District, and throughout the Central District boundary. So made it really clear that that's where we had to go.
Absolutely. Jackie, did you have any additional comments?
Yes, I would also add to that, to be fully transparent, I am not a Seattle native. I'm not a Washingtonian. I am from the East Coast. And as someone who arrived here fairly recently, the Central District was the first place that I landed. It was the first place that welcomed me openly as a Black person coming from another place. And for me, being not from here, not even having spent a lot of time on the West Coast, I think there's a perception that specifically the Pacific Northwest, there aren't really a lot of Black people here. And so that's completely false. And for me, really understanding and digging into the stories and the history of the Central District specifically was really important, because I wanted to then share back out to say, we've been here for a long time. Black folks have been here for a long time. Black folks have really made significant contributions to the Central District and have shaped it in a lot of ways for decades and decades and decades. And so for me, it was really important to elevate a lot of these stories, particularly of the places that are still around, because to combat some of this perception, and particularly as the Central District begins, has been in this process of gentrification, it's really important for me to have folks understand, whether you've been living in Seattle or King County or the state your whole life, or whether you just moved here 5 months ago. I think it's really valuable to understand the impact that Black folks have had here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Omari, did you have anything you wanted to comment about the site, the sort of general area of the tour?
Yeah, well, I mean, one is home. I grew up in the Central District, went to James A. Garfield High School. And, it's interesting. I like with Jackie's comment, and because like a lot of people that come from, especially cities with big Black populations, they'll come to Seattle. And a lot of times the first thing that people will point out is like, well, where's the Black people? Where's this and that? And I mean, what's interesting about this tour, well, I'm in media. So the first thing I say is, oh, you're from Pittsburgh, you're from Chicago, you're from DC. Well, how many Black newspapers do you have there? You know what I'm saying? And I mean, the measurement of culture has changed over the years. And so that's always what I say. We got a lot of Black people who come to Seattle from different places where they let their Black radio die, where they let their Black newspapers die. And here we've got our legacy Black radio. We've got, 2 Black newspapers. Today, Rainier Avenue Radio celebrated their 4th year anniversary. Next month, the Emeralds celebrating their anniversary. So the measurement of culture sometimes is a little bit different in that, our culture, other places might have more restaurants or more this and more that, but, our media remains. But also, like, it's real interesting moving around in the Central District because, and maybe we'll talk about this a little more as well. And although some of our churches have disappeared, those churches and some of these sites tell a story. And it tells a story, the first AME 140 years ago, right there, it's now considered Capitol Hill, but it tells the story. It's the ghost of the past. It tells you like where all these Black people were once at in our neighborhood. And it's demarked by these churches, and these churches, a lot of them, as well, make up the boundaries of the original Central District. But I think that you can't tell the story of really Black people in the state of Washington without telling the story of the Central District. It's very much has been with population and will continue to be through its just very existence and its epicenter of Black culture for Seattle and the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. And well, we certainly hope it's the first of many features of Black culture in the state. So it certainly makes sense to start here. So speaking a little bit more specifically about the sites and the themes, I think we even have a question already asking about how did you go about selecting the themes and the sites? And was that kind of a process that went in tandem, or did you select the sites first and kind of group them by theme? Can you talk a little bit to that process? And maybe we'll start with Stephanie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the themes were not really that difficult. When I initially sat down with Jackie and we were doing a little brainstorming around that, and we went right to the themes because the themes are central to all communities. I think there's nothing about the 4 themes that we laid out, and that we can find relevant sites that have meaning within all of those themes. So that was pretty solid for us in the beginning. The hard part was narrowing down the sites. Because there are so many sites that are representative of, a much wider history that we have here in the Central District. The Central District was really a vital place, and really grew its population through the 30s and 40s and 50s and on until, we saw a shift right after I'd say by 1970s, 80s, and by 1990, the population in the Central District, the Black population, was the lowest it had been since just around World War II, before World War II. So had to go to places that allowed us to tell some of the significant stories of places that some that still exist, like the churches. Omari made a very good point, the churches, but also places that don't exist anymore, but are not tangible, but in an intangible way have a significant meaning. So yeah, difficult to narrow it down to 15 sites. I think initially we had like 25 were on the table, and we had to back it out, and it was a hard choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I did see a few of those lists earlier when there were more sites. So I guess, did you have a specific process for narrowing them down? Maybe Jackie, you could speak to kind of, obviously all the sites are important.
Yeah. I think part of it was that alleviated our stress a little bit, was thinking about this in terms of a longer project. And I know that, we haven't necessarily thought too much about this, but thinking about, okay, this is the beginning. What are sort of the key places that where do we want people to start? What really gets at some of these key stories and supports these themes the most or the best? And I think also the fact that Shelf Life was really gracious and lent us a lot of that oral history. It became very clear what still lives in people's memories and what things people get really excited about when they're sharing their stories of living in the Central District through various times. That also kind of helped us think through, okay, what is really meaningful to the people that still live here, to the people that used to live here, that came through in a lot of those oral histories, and some of those which you'll see and hear as part of that tour. So not just, our collective brain trust, but also what the community and what folks in their stories and their memories were telling us, which places and experiences and spaces really meant the most to them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Omari, did you have any comments on that? Or I don't know if Omari was as involved in the site selection, or if you kind of came in a little bit later to help bring in the materials after the sites were finalized.
A lot of the list had been narrowed down when we came into the project, but I mean, we were gracious. Stephanie was gracious enough to inquire about our opinion. And she was real intentional with that, and it was kind of humbling because she really is top of the class for what she does there in archiving and in cataloging and telling the stories of Black history, especially in the Central District. But she took time to ask our opinion on the sites that were selected, and we were in agreement. And fortunately, growing up in the neighborhood, everything I was already familiar with. And so it was really cool because we were able to talk about, okay, well, how do we look at this? Or how, what I'm saying, different kind of views or aspects of it. And so it was a really good fit. And I'm glad that she contacted us as people who are from the neighborhood.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I'd like to say, a little something about that too, and with Converge and Shelf Life is that they added tremendously to this project. You know, Jackie and I, we write, and sometimes as excited as we are about our writing, sometimes just reading content is flat, and zeroing in on the sites with just text is a little difficult. So what lifts this project are the stories, and also that really beautiful video that we have at the start of the tour that was put together by Converge at Converge Media. So that really set the tone for the tour. And I wish that we could have used more of the excerpts that were provided by Jill Friedberg at Shelf Life. But I agree that this is just the beginning, I hope, of maybe a small series of African American heritage sites, and we'll bring more of those stories and more video to you.
Would be excellent. And I saw actually in the chat that folks have already been asking what other sites did you want to feature? You have to give us more. So I will actually, that's a good segue into my next question, which was to Omari about can you talk a little bit about how you approach documenting Black history and contemporary culture in Seattle, and just kind of your process and approach to that?
Well, thank you for that question. It's pretty dope, for at least for my life and my timeline here, because I was in it, immersed in it, and it isn't something that I necessarily had to learn when, it's the oral history growing up in the neighborhood. And I remember the heyday of what we talk about in our neighborhood, when the Central District was bustling and thriving. There might be a few people on the call who might not necessarily know the history of the Central District. And I know we don't have enough time for that, but you got to imagine that, this was a redlined area, but we had our own economic drivers, our own grocery stores, our own drugstores we used to walk to, our own dentist, our own dry cleaner, our own everything. This is our neighborhood. This neighborhood is about 80% Black. It's down to maybe, I don't know, 10, 7, whatever they say it is right now. But there was such a sense of pride, right? And it was that pride that you want to capture, even in the smallest things. I'll be brief here, but in the smallest things, we talked about earlier this year, it was a bunch of Metro drivers who took early retirement because of COVID to make space for the young drivers. And I remember on my morning show talking about being a kid in the Central District and being a Metro kid riding that bus. But how much pride those Black Metro drivers, they had the brown vest in, and they, you know what I'm saying? They move around the neighborhood, but you also knew you better not mess up on that bus, because that Metro driver live in the neighborhood, might go to your church, know your mama, and some of everything else. And, it's these things. I look back in my neighborhood, and I'll be honest with you, it is the pain that I feel. It can't be described, because I'm so scared that we'll look up and people won't even realize that we once walked this way, that we were here, that we lived. And not only did we occupy a neighborhood, we were part and parcel of building that neighborhood. And so when I'm looking at this, and I look at these stories, and I look at what's going on here, for me, it's a determination that people will always know that we walked this way, that we were here. And it's important that people never forget. And it's a lot of emotion that really goes into it. And being that, it's a lot of going into it, like, how can we make sure in one photo or one interview or whatever to capture so many things? How do we capture 100 years of importance about a building, so people will maybe ask questions or remember and things like that? It's a real emotional process, probably because we're so attached to it. It'd be different if someone dispatched me out of town. I'd learn some stories and this and that, and you go home. But see, this is a project where I can't go home because every time I go back to my neighborhood, I see it's changed more. So even though the photos have been uploaded and the website is there, the impact of this project is still ever present.
Oh, Omari, that was really well said.
Mhm.
I
I'm tearing up.
I know, this project was very emotional for me too, as a fourth generation Seattleite. There aren't many of us around. And so from my great grandparents to my grandparents, my mother's, her family, and myself, and then my family here in Seattle, seeing the changes over the years, it's been dramatic. In some ways, it sort of snuck up on us in a way, but what we do here and with this tour and at the Black Heritage Society is to make sure that we're preserving that footprint. And we're not going to let this community down, this city down. We're part of the national fabric. We've been vital to building this community. And so it's through, opportunities like this tour that we're able to share out that history.
Thank you both for those excellent comments. Like Jackie, I also was getting a little teary over here. So thank you so much. We've got about 5 minutes left until we switch over to the audience questions. So I think I'll end with a question a little bit related to what we've been talking about. And that is, and I'll pass it to each of you, I think, is what do you hope most that someone will take away from this tour? Someone from the general public who really only has maybe minimal exposure to the Central District and maybe almost no exposure to its history, its deep history with Black heritage. I guess what would be the takeaway that you'd like to see people have as they explore the tour and the materials? And we'll start with Jackie, I think.
Well, it's going to be hard to follow Omari, but I will echo what he said in the sense of that feeling, that deep sense of pride, that pride should extend not just to other Black folks, but to everybody who comes through the Central District, ideally. It is just a wonderful, rich, vibrant neighborhood that as a Seattleite, as a visitor to Seattle, I want people to be proud of that too. I want people to feel connected to that history. I want people to be excited and moved by the stories that they're hearing and say, wow, look at this beautiful place that these folks have built out of, whole cloth from scratch. And just that sense of, wow, what a wonderful thing this community has given to the city.
And so Stephanie, maybe if you don't have any additional comments than what you already said, just takeaways you'd like for the public to have through this tour.
Yeah, I'm agreeing and nodding with everything that both Jackie and Omari have been saying. Like I said, I think that we're all maybe we're related in some sort of ways. We've got this wavelength, this community that we built, this dream team that came together to compile this tour. And I just want everyone to be able to take away an appreciation for the history of this community, this neighborhood, the Black history, not only in Seattle, but statewide, and to get really curious about it, because these are, we've just touched on a few sites and help to understand the history of just a few sites. So we want you to get out there and be really curious and dig a little deeper, and don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time to ask, about history. Invite us to talk to you about the history of Seattle and how Black people helped to build this community.
Thank you. And then Omari, did you have any additional comments?
What I want people to take away from this is people should know, Black people did not come to Seattle or the state of Washington as beggars. They came as buyers. You came with someone like William Gross, who came out and bought 12 acres of land. You talk about 100 years ago where you had Black people running for city council out here. You had Black landowners and some everything. We didn't come out here as beggars. In order to come out here, you had a pioneering spirit to chase what was new out west. That American dream of go west, it extended to Black people too. They didn't let us in the door down there in Oregon though. So you took a right and you came up here up north. And these were pioneers who came here. These were people who were wealthy, people who were builders, people who, you know what I'm saying? When you talk about the wealth of the people who built the Black and Tan and all these other things everywhere else. So when people look at the Black community today that sits here and somewhat marginalized and broken and fragmented, you should take away that we were once whole and we were once mighty in this city. And God willing, maybe we'll be there again. But if nothing else, people should take away that we didn't come out here looking for handouts. These were pioneers that came out here. These were pioneers that came with their own money and their own resources and made a way against a way.
Here, here.
And
yeah, yeah, I know all that.
Well, thank you so much, Omari. And I do want to ask a few questions from the audience. So if folks haven't found it yet, there is the Q&A in the bottom menu. We do have a few that have popped up already. We did have one comment from Jason that there's a list of cultural history pages that doesn't include this page yet, which that's a technical issue on the website, which we will correct. It's just a matter of this being some new content and we forgot to add it to that dropdown. So that will be corrected soon. I think Mary Grace Becker's question about the themes was answered. And then we did have a question from an anonymous attendee that says, earlier, Omari explained how one way Black culture and communities exemplified in Seattle is through media such as radio and newspapers. In Seattle, are there any standout restaurants, cuisine, or food history that is representative of the Black history? So I know that you mentioned that maybe it's a little different in Seattle than some other Black communities, but the audience is interested if you have any specific comments or suggestions about that.
I think Stephanie's a good one for that.
Yeah, well, you know what, in early on, when we were thinking, or I was sitting and thinking myself about how we were going to bring the different locations and sites to this tour, I did want to talk about food and the history of restaurants in our community, but that is like one whole topic. I mean, it's big. I mean, we had a wonderful, beautiful history of restaurants and entertainment here, jazz themes and blues and all of it. So that could be a tour in itself. We have fabulous restaurants now and businesses that are finding their way back to the Central District after so many years. And, you know, at the Liberty Bank building, that was initially put forward as a potential heritage site for the city of Seattle. It didn't make it on that list. That's another story too, but what came of it was the Liberty Bank building and this affordable living space. And in that building, there's retail space for the restaurant Communion, a beautiful restaurant there. A barber, Earl's, is there, you know, long time history in our community. And so we see their businesses coming back. And I think, you know, that's a great point, is we should highlight our Black businesses. The Postman is another. And we're excited about these businesses, restaurants included, that are coming back to the Central District. Miss Helen, I mean, there's so much history, right? We could talk about it all day.
Absolutely. We need more tours. More tours. All right. So one of the comments which I alluded to earlier is, once we're acquainted with these 15 sites, we'll want more. could the panelists share with us some of the additional sites that were considered? Certainly you don't have to list out all of them, but it might be interesting for folks to hear some of those sites and at least get some of those names on their radar, hopefully, as we continue to grow and expand the content.
Mm-hmm. Along with the restaurants, another, fabulous history of the Central District that flowed from the International District is the music and jazz, and how we can build on that and pull out the history of all of the former locations where our musicians and performers perform. Most people have heard of the Black and Tan, but there were so many other clubs and small kind of holes in the wall that were really vibrant and places where people went to be entertained and to entertain. So I would love for us to be able to put together something more extensive on that. We have lots of images and documents and history at BHS to be able to support that. The 1960s civil rights movement as well was very important, and we could do more around that with CORE and other sites. I think we did include on this one a little excerpt on the Camp Firehouse, but the Central Air Motivation Program that today is now Bird Bar Place, and all of the energy that came out of that during the 1960s, and the programs. I'm sorry, I'm going blank, but so many programs that came out of the 1960s and were supporting, Black folks here in the Central District. Lots of themes and topics. I could be all over the place with it, and that's why I have Jackie, to help me focus. And she was huge in that piece of it, was to bring me back home and focus to just get to these 15 sites that we have on this particular tour.
Well, it sounds like we're going to need to do a music and jazz themed tour as well, because it seems like that may be the biggest piece that got a little representation with Black and Tan, which is one of the sites, but that there's so much more story to tell there. All right, we do have a few other questions. What is the plan to incorporate this project into educational curriculum? Most do not know about your historical website. I'll make a couple comments on that myself first, but yeah, the Revisiting Washington is a big project that we have been trying to get out into more publicity for, and partnering with groups like the Black Heritage Society is one avenue where we're hoping that by including more partners and including more content that is interesting to wider audiences, that hopefully we can continue to help get the word out. So from the Washington Trust perspective, this is like a key strategy is partnering and getting more content. But we don't have anything in particular. I don't know if the person was referring to specifically like classrooms or public school curriculum, but we certainly would be willing to have people use the content as it is, or if they need any support with how the content is on the website, we're happy to add, assist with that. But I wonder, Jackie or Stephanie, if BHS has any specific plans for programming or educational events or other things with this tour, or is it just a matter of getting the word out and getting more eyes on it and having people use use the website?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be linking it to the BHS website, but I've already had outreach from other groups. In fact, yesterday, just talking to someone from the Jewish Heritage Society about a tour that they're putting together and wanting to link this tour to what they're constructing. And so I think we're going to hear more and more about that. But also, BHS is involved with a new alliance called the Black Education, Heritage, and History Alliance that pulls together 5 organizations, including blackpast.org, the Black Education Strategy Roundtable, Unspoken Truths with Delbert Richardson, NAM, and also the Black genealogists here in Seattle. So we're all now in a formal alliance, and our priority is to bring a 12th K through 12 curriculum, and we hope through support of organizations like For Culture to be able to provide as an opportunity where this tour could be incorporated into that as well. So yeah, we're really thinking hard about how to utilize this tour beyond just sitting at the Washington Trust website is just beautiful, but how can we grow that and expand it?
Like, and get it out to the people so they look at it and use it. And one of the things that I like the most about it personally is that it has this interactive feature that if you pull it up on a phone, you've got that blue dot and you can actually stand there and look at the sites and read about them. And again, try to keep the information short enough to maybe read on your phone, but enough to give you a real sense of that history and the background. So Jackie, did you have any comments about that, about educational curriculum?
I think Stephanie covered it. That's pretty much everything I'm aware of. I don't do a lot of work directly with our education system, but I'm certainly always working in support of broadening any educational opportunities of the work that BHS does, of the work that I do, of the work that Converge Media does. I think that we are all collectively working towards making all of this more accessible to folks, particularly young folks. I know there's a lot of interest in connecting younger and younger folks to this history, to these stories. And so I think the initiative that Stephanie just mentioned is going to be a big move in that direction. And at this point, that's pretty much all I know about.
I just want to throw this in here real quick. That what we find on our morning update show is a lot of new people in Seattle. It's a lot of people, especially now, what's been going on the last year. They want to learn more about it and everything else. So like for us, we're always throwing in tidbits from the Black Heritage Society into our morning show anyway. And so like, this is just great content for us. And another thing to keep in mind when we talk about educate, when we talk about the young, which is important, but it's a boatload of ignorant people here in the city now who, and it's really up to us. You think people will come and want to learn, but that's fine. It's up to us to make sure that people know that it's like, this is our history. This is our, this is our culture. This is what we're all about. And so the resources like this is good in educating a lot of people. So many people transplant here. And a lot of times people will make the assumption of all the different cultures here in Seattle, they'll make the assumption that we don't have none. You know what I'm saying? So this is a great tool and resource for grown folks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I agree.
I'm agreeing. And before we, we get out of here today too, I want to be sure that people know that they can go to the Shelf Life Story Project, Community Story Project site. They can find that online. We should. I'm sorry that Jill couldn't join us today to talk more about that, but there are really beautiful stories of people who've lived, who recreate, who do business in the Central District, that story project grew out of the 23rd and Jackson red apple that was going to be demolished to make way for a large Vulcan development on that corner at 23rd and Jackson. So the stories were being collected. Oh gosh, I think they started at least 3 years ago. And so that project is still going on, and there's some new stories that are coming online. So please visit their website and check it out.
Wonderful. Well, I think we might end there. We still got a couple minutes, but I don't know that we have enough time to get into a couple of the questions in the Q&A. Other than this last one, people asking about a searchable database for historic Black newspapers, and I thought that might be a quick question. Is that available through BHS or maybe MOHI, or do you have any other resources that people might use if they're interested in exploring more on their own about Black history? Maybe start with Jackie.
None that I know of. You know, BHS has some selections in their archive, but I don't know of a searchable database specifically. Stephanie might be able to speak also what's available in MOHI's collection. I think the Seattle Public Library, which is also linked to MOHI, and UW Special Collections may also have some resources there. But Stephanie probably has a more specific resource.
Yeah. Oh, I see that Ryan dropped something into the chat too. Thank you, Ryan. That's a great resource. Yeah. Hey, Ryan, and Holly too, Taylor. So those are great, and good point, Jackie, with obviously UW Special Collections, checking out our partners at MOHI is a fabulous idea. And then the Seattle Public Library. I mean, they are awesome. They just recently reached out to me to say that they have a collection of documents, photos, and so on that when they were rebuilding, renovating the Douglas Truth Library, they took all those items down, stored them in boxes, and they've been stored there for years, and they're looking at digitizing all of that, all of those records to be able to share out. And a large part of it is on the history of Black people in the Central District. So I'm really excited, to hear more and see more from the Seattle Public Library on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We'll throw up a last slide on the screen with our contact information if folks want to know more or contact any of the panelists directly with additional questions. Has been recorded, so we'll be posting it on YouTube so it can be accessible otherwise. But a huge thank you to Stephanie, Omari, and Jackie. We really appreciate your time today, and of course, all of the hard work on this project, which we're so honored to have on the Revisiting Washington website. We hope you will all take some time to explore the sites, share out far and wide so more people can see the tour and learn about Black history in the Central District in King County. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Washington Trust.
Thank you.